What is up, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of Questions You Never Thought to Ask, the Whitewater Kayaking Podcast. My name is Seth Ashworth, and before we get into this week's episode, which I know you're going to enjoy, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. I have to say a big thank you, shout out to the people who support this podcast on Patreon. They really do a great job of keeping the lights on and keeping the podcast up and running. Patreon is a crowdfunding platform where you can chip in a couple of bucks each month and get early access to the podcast, and that kind of helps me keep it going and keep it up and running to cover some of the costs of running the podcast. Without those people, I could not do this, so I really want to say thank you to everyone who supports on there. If you're interested in becoming a supporter, you can check that out on patreon.com/Seth Ashworth. That's patreon.com/Seth Ashworth. All right, let's get into it. Okay, welcome back to Questions You Never Thought to Ask, the Whitewater Kayaking Podcast. This week, I'm joined with a young up-and-comer, a man you will undoubtedly have seen in videos from the last few years. I spoke to his brother on an earlier episode, but today we're speaking with Hayden Voorhees, aka the Slaying Mantis. Hayden, how are you?
Doing good. How are you doing?
Great. It's great to have you on the podcast. Funnily enough, when I was talking to Alec a few weeks ago, I was like, I really want to get Hayden on here, but I kind of want to wait. I don't want to let his head get too big. And Alec was like, yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, I've been waiting, actually. I've been waiting for that call.
I feel like the timing was right, and the thing that really kind of spurred me on was I was just cruising through last year's Whitewater Awards, because this year's Whitewater Awards are coming out at this time.
Yep.
And I just, every video I watched, if you weren't in the top 3, you'd be in the reel. I was like, oh man, I gotta talk to Hayden. He's had a really good couple of years.
Yep.
And I wanted to talk about some of your career highlights in the last 2 years. But why don't we start at the start? What's your name? Where you're from? Give everyone your lowdown for those people who live under a rock.
So Hayden Voorhees. I'm from Meridian, Idaho. 21 years old. I started kayaking when I was 6. Both my parents taught me and my brothers how to kayak, and kind of just went from there. Went on the freestyle route for a long time, and then once I started getting stronger and a little bit bigger and started fitting in the creek boats, then I kind of started working my way up the North Fork and kind of learned a lot of my skills through big water, and then just started traveling around. Started liking waterfalls and kind of just doing it all now.
Yeah, I think that's a very humble description of your paddling career so far, but respect. A little anecdotal story for people who don't know you, and especially just come back to something you just said about getting bigger. When I first met you would have been 2015 Worlds at Garb here on the Ottawa River, and you were everyone knew you was like Alec's younger brother, right? But it was very frustrating to be behind you in the lineup because you were a pretty small kid, but in a medium-sized boat, so you just never ever flushed off the wave, and it didn't matter how many times you'd land on your face. Your boat had so much extra volume, you just like roll back up and still be on the wave. And so everyone else is having like minute rides or like minute 10 rides, and you're in there like 4-minute rides, and like a minute of that might have been like face surf time, and you're still in there. Everybody else is upside down, and they're like immediately off the wave. And you were obviously a lot smaller then, but it was a very frustrating time to be behind you in the lineup.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I wish that's how it went in the competition, though. For some reason, I could stay in the wave no matter what before, and then during the competition, I just like didn't make it past semis because I kept flushing. But
sometimes she goes, sometimes she doesn't. That's just the way she blows,
Yep.
All right, let's talk about. I people who listen to this podcast will have heard Alec kind of talk about growing up in Idaho, and his parents taking turns parenting and going kayaking. What was it like growing up like in Alec's shadow, both literally because he's a lot taller than you and like metaphorically?
Yeah, I mean, he definitely made it pretty easy for me in a way, like kind of, as he started getting better, I started watching him more and kind of starting to try and like not necessarily copy him, because I feel like we've got pretty different paddling styles, but kind of just learning from him and starting to get invited on his trips a little bit more as I got better, and now starting to like branch out a little bit more and kind of do our own things, but still paddle with each other a lot and still have a lot of fun together.
Yeah, your paddling styles are like definitely quite different if you watch like you versus him on the same rapid. Who do you think is like would have been like a more influential person that you were looking at when you were kind of figuring out your style versus Alec?
That's a good question. Yeah, I mean, obviously I'd watch just kind of the best, like watching Dane. You can't ever like, it's hard to copy what Dane does sometimes, but it's good to kind of study that kind of perfect paddling style in a way. And then also kind of watching Annual, Nick, and kind of just like picking my way through who I don't really like necessarily copy anybody's style. I don't think I'd kind of, a lot of people paddle with like a more like kind of flowy and kind of use the river a little bit more just because, I grew up a smaller kid, so having to use all the curlers and everything to my advantage. So I'd say that's probably where I kind of started my paddling style.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to make it sound like your style is directly correlated to another person, because it's definitely your own thing. I just was curious to see if there was going to be a correlation between the people who you were looking up to, who are like similar body types to you, especially as you were smaller, and Dane's a pretty small guy. As much as he tries to be a big guy, like he's a smaller build human, and I was just interested to see if there was a correlation, but no big deal.
I'd probably say my body type is really similar to like EG in a way, and so
yeah, you definitely got that like wiry, reachy. Yeah, and there's definitely some overlaps there if you think about like how you like riding tall.
Yeah,
interesting. It's an interesting thing to think about. I don't.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think about it a lot, and then sometimes I never think about it. I'm just like, I'm just going kayaking, whatever. But when I do stop and think about it, it's interesting. It's interesting to think about what what influences other people versus what influenced you. So growing up made it pretty easy with Alec, right? And then at some point you started to splinter off, and you got when do you think that turning point was when you kind of broke out of under Alec's wing?
So before, I didn't really do too many like paddling trips, just being in school. I didn't really go his route and do online school. I went to public school throughout high school. And so I didn't really get to do too much traveling before that. Like throughout the summer, I'd kind of try and paddle as much as possible. But then I'd probably say right after I graduated, I'd say I took a gap year, but I haven't actually gone back to school. So I don't know if I can call it a gap year anymore. But I think that year is when I went to Unleashed during the high water floods and kind of just try to paddle as much as possible. I went down to Chile that winter in Mexico, kind of just kind of did that whole thing.
Yeah, a lot of the classic South America trips, right? Like Mexico is like that was one of my first big kayaking trips. Like Chile was early on my list of kayaking trips. It's they're pretty logistically they're well done, right? Like well documented.
Yeah.
It's not like you're breaking new ground for a lot of the time.
Especially being young, those are pretty good places.
I think that helps when you're younger, right? Like finding those places you can go that are pretty well-worn paths, right? Because it just makes that whole experience a little bit easier.
Yeah, somewhere you don't have to figure out renting a car and whatnot.
Yeah, especially when you're 18 years old. Yeah, that's a little more challenging. And at what stage of that career progression do you think you started getting really a taste for really big waterfalls, like more than 50 feet?
So actually, the first big waterfall that I'd ever done was when I went to Chile for the first time when I was 18. Or I was actually 17 when I first got there and then turned 18 while I was there. No, I was 18, turned 19, sorry. Was Tres Saltos. And before that, I'd only run Spirit, which is like 30 feet maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tres Saltos was my first big waterfall. And I kind of like, I was definitely pushing it on kind of like just going for it. I knew that like with a playboating background, I had the boat control and kind of was able to stay calm on some of those big waterfalls. But I went from Tres Saltos, which was my first plug, had a pretty good line on that, and then I went straight to Newen. And then right after that, I went to the kind of new waterfall La Leona at the bottom of the Claro.
And to fill in some like kind of stepping stone heights for people who are listening along who aren't familiar with these, you went from like 55 feet to 80 feet to about another 70 or 80 feet. Is that right?
Yep.
So that's a significant step up, right?
Yeah, not very many people. I mean, I would have liked to start a little smaller, start on like a 40-footer, kind of learn what it was like to plug something. But yeah, that's kind of just, I never really was anywhere, with waterfalls, you're kind of like, if you're in the right place at the right time, then you'll go do them, So
yeah. And that
never
like
really was.
Stuff being level dependent too, especially for waterfalls. There's like quite often really narrow windows on when you actually want to be running a drop because of how the landing's going to be and how much water you want at the top and the bottom, and you're not having that lead in be as maximal crazy,
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I would have loved to have a little bit more warm up, little step up on every waterfall, but yeah, I just kind of went for it. Haven't really had terrible line on anything, maybe landing on my head a couple times, but other than that, I've been pretty fortunate with how they've all gone.
Since then, you have progressed pretty significantly, right? From those like first two big drops, you've run most of the what I would say air quotes like classic big waterfalls that I can think of, at least, like the big ones in Mexico. Have you run Tomato 2?
I did run Tomato 2, yeah.
Ugh, that one is scary. Like, I don't think I'll ever run that one. I can't see it. You know what I mean? That is like one of the scarier ones to me. And you've run a lot of the like Northwest classics, from what I understand.
Yeah, a couple. There's still a lot that I haven't done yet.
And then in the last 2 years, you've run some very notable ones. The ones that spring to mind to me were having that amazing line on Puma in Chile, which is like 100 and I don't know how big that one is, 100 and some.
Yeah, 110, 115.
110, 115, and I think were you the first person to stay in their boat after that?
No, I wasn't. Annual went first, and I think he ejected on that one, and then the German guy, I forget who, he did it ridiculously high, and I think he swam, and then EG went back. EG broke his leg, but he stayed in his boat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because your line, I just watched it again this morning for a little like homework before this chat. I was like, oh, your line was so greasy. It was so good. And am I right in saying you ran it quite a bit lower than it's been run before?
No, I was actually watching a lot of EG's videos, and like, that was the first, I'd say, tall waterfall that I'd done.
Yeah. And that's not an easy like first tall waterfall either. It's like a kind of complicated lead in. There's that seam right at the top, which is like kind of sucking down and slowing you down and putting you in a place where you don't want to be necessarily right at the top.
Yeah. Yeah, super unpredictable. It's one of the craziest ones that I've done for sure, because you like have to go in steps. Like there's essentially 3 different features. There's like one little V hole and then a seam and then the lip, and you can't see the next step until you get through the one before it. So you know, it's a little tricky and a little intimidating for that. But yeah, I was studying a lot.
What was the studying process? You've talked about studying a lot. What was the studying process like for that? Like what does that actually mean? Imagine you're talking to someone who's never been on a waterfall with a complicated 3-stage lead in before into 110, 115 foot drop. What are you studying for? What are you looking for?
So basically, I went and found all the videos of the people running it before and screen recorded them so I could just like watch them before bed. You know, I do this thing where like I'll dream a lot before, like if I'm planning on doing something big or kind of have something in my mind, I'll dream about it. And I think going down to Chile, I was like kind of looking at it, but haven't really seen it in person, so I wasn't gonna say that I was gonna do it. But I kept dreaming about running it and having like pretty decent lines every time in my dreams, and then finally the day came and I did it basically same level as like EG and annual, and yeah.
And it's the process of dreaming yourself down the line, or like visualization, if you want to call it that, seems to be very different for different people. And so for you, are you just trying to you literally watch those videos before you go to sleep?
Yeah, and like waking up, if I wasn't doing anything, I'd watch them. You know, I took it pretty seriously. I was like definitely pretty nervous, but it was something that I wanted to do, so I wanted to make sure that I was like looking at everything possible. I watched Evan's video so many times, and even though he broke his leg, that was kind of the exact line that I wanted to go for. But you know, every waterfall, every time down a waterfall is different, but that's kind of what I was aiming for.
And the video of you running it, there's this incredible boat control component that we haven't really talked about yet, where you can see your bow rising about half or 2/3 of the way down, and you just set it right back down to exactly where you want it to be. And in the slow-mo video, it's the most incredible moment because you can really see this boat movement. What did that feel like halfway down when you realize your bow is starting to come up?
Yeah, it was like, I don't quite remember, like after the waterfall, like I wasn't really thinking too much about it. I just like felt my bow come up. There was like a surge that kind of just sprayed out right below my bow, like a quarter of the way down, and that just boofed me out to like 45 or maybe even more. And I just like threw in a huge backstroke and stomped my bow down when I threw my paddle and got it down to vertical. But I definitely thought that I boofed it when I landed. I like had some friends on a ledge below, and they pulled me out of the kind of eddy on the right, and I was like, I think I boofed it, and he's like, yeah, you did, but he couldn't see much because of the mist and how much I got it down. But yeah, it was pretty funny. The GoPro's pretty good.
Yeah, I can't even imagine the self-talk on that, because I've made some mistakes in the past, and I've like landed more flat than I'd like to off some taller drops than I'd have liked to have landed, and I've 45'd a couple of bigger drops that I would have liked to have been putting it down on. And I can remember vividly that feeling of like just pulling on that stroke at the top just a teensy bit too hard, and being like, oh, I can like, if I really think back to it, I can think on that feeling of like, oh no. And it's the same like, oh no feeling I know when like just when I'm about to get injured. It's like, oh no.
Yeah. I haven't landed flat off too many waterfalls. I've definitely kind of leaned more on the going over the bars. You know, I like land on my head pretty good off Tomato 1.
Yeah, I don't recommend flat from high up, but luckily I have survived the ones I have done.
Yeah.
And then most recently, the one I want to talk about is your most recent Hawaii trip.
Yeah.
And you notched up a second descent right after Dane.
Yeah, I did a couple of second descents over there.
Let's talk about them. Break them down. What did you do? What happened? How big were they? What was the conditions? What rivers were they on? Tell me.
Yeah, so it was a super last minute trip going to Hawaii. Like, I think Dane has been planning on going for a while, ever since he was in Zambezi, and then some people bailed on it, and he like called me and Alec probably 10 days before he was going and asked if we wanted to go. Looked at tickets, and they were still pretty cheap, reasonable, and so we booked it that night. And we just like kept seeing the forecast, and it was just like rain the whole time we were going to be there, which we were stoked about. We didn't really know how much rain it would take to like bring everything in, but we got there perfect levels on the Wailuku River, which is basically one of the main river that you do there. But yeah, it was perfect levels. We got few days of kind of just joy laps, and then the rain started coming in, bringing river levels up. The first big waterfall that we did, that was the first descent, was Pepe, and we measured it at about 69 feet.
That is tall.
Yeah, no, it was, and we did a little low, but it was one of the waterfalls that you actually portage around every time you run the river. And so the first time I like portage around, you come around this island, you look back up, and there's just this huge, like, beautiful waterfall. And I was like, why don't we go do that? And just like said that nobody's ever done it before. He was going to do it the year before, or the last trip that he came down. But yeah, it was like one of the ones that he obviously wanted to do ever since he got there the first time.
And did you go through a pretty extensive like depth checking process for that one? Like, or had Dane done a lot of the legwork on that for you?
Yeah, I think we paddled up to it, I'm pretty sure, and it was pretty obvious that it was going to be pretty deep. But I think that Dane's actually like swam below it before, and kind of done all that probing, make sure it's deep. But yeah, we got a little bit of rain one night, got a little too high for the river, and then the next day we kind of just went for it, and we were kind of pushing it on the low side of that drop, but in a way, like, it was pretty good flows because you have to run the rest of the river after you do it.
Yeah. So you want enough so it's not scary to paddle out.
Yeah, enough water that there's a good boil below the waterfall, and then not too much water for the rest of the run, which is pretty scary at that flow.
Yeah, I believe it. Like, you're not. Do you want to describe that Wailuku River Run for people who haven't been to Hawaii or haven't been following the Wailuku videos?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been saying that it's kind of like Big Banana section on steroids. It's just very pool drop, lava rock, just gorged in, and just like pretty perfect when it comes to like size of everything and being able to do everything on that river.
So we're thinking like pool drop, waterfalls, varying sizes, some longer rapids, stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're like you're saying, you're kind of penned in there once you commit, you're committed.
Yeah, there's basically the one that we were really worried about was this one called Raptor, which is a 50-footer with kind of like a sliding entrance. And at lower flows, you can walk it. You have to you actually like put a spray skirt on the boat and send the boat off by itself, because you have to traverse around this wall and then jump off into the waterfall. You're gonna walk around it. But when it's high, then there isn't like a little micro eddy to get out in. So once we went in there, we were committed to running that one at a pretty high level.
And
Probably,
is that the same waterfall that Caleb Grady posted a video of a couple of years ago where he's like he's like stuck in this eddy between a hole and a drop for like 10 minutes?
No, that's actually a different one.
Oof. Okay.
Yeah. That one's on the Honolulu stream. Which
Okay. Sorry, I cut across you. We're still talking about Wailuku. You penned in. Was there anything else that's of concern? Obviously, you penned in the whole time.
Yeah, just some big holes at the. There was one hole that I actually got stuck in that I got pretty lucky. I got out of on that run, but yeah, just like kind of that one was the main concern, and then after that it was kind of just okay, let's make it through these holes, and then we got out halfway down the river just because we didn't want to go down the lower section when it was high. We did that the day before, and we were
is that
pretty
a similar situation of scary penned inness?
Yeah, basically.
Good times. And then you had one other big drop right behind Dane on that trip. Walk us through it.
Yeah, I can't actually say too much about it, but
why not?
Just kind of like had a bad news interview, and kind of brought some attention to the park rangers, but
okay,
yeah.
well, without describing names and places, walk us through what happened.
I mean, it's already out there, but Rainbow Falls, about close to that triple digit mark. Nobody had ever done the right line before. Takes quite a bit of rain for that one. Dane had obviously done the middle line before, after a couple other people. But the right line sweet is kind of just the perfect rolling 100-footer. Yeah, that one was really cool.
Yeah, the video of it looks insane.
Yeah. No, that one was super fun. It was like just enough of an entrance to like make it a little interesting, but nothing to really mess you up before. And then probably took the most savage hit I've ever taken off a waterfall. At the bottom,
could you describe what that felt like for people who have never taken a big waterfall hit?
The way that I explain it to people is probably like taking a hit, like getting tackled in football.
Okay.
You know, you've got your pads and everything, so it doesn't hurt too bad. But every time you get hit, you're more likely to take a bigger hit.
Yeah, I describe it like being in a small car accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ugh. And after that, you just feel pretty wrecked, eh? Just like pretty bad on your neck and back, and everything sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't too sore after that. My back was pretty sore. I just like went incredibly deep and nearly ripped my helmet off and kind of stuff like that. But yeah, that one was really fun. We got pretty lucky that we were able to do that one.
And then you got in a bit of trouble afterwards about it.
Yeah, kind of.
That sucks.
Yeah, kind of a unfortunate ending to the trip, but the way it goes sometimes.
But did you end up with the same as Dane and Nick had, having to do community service, teaching roles at the bottom of the waterfall?
We actually nothing's happened yet, which is why
great.
I can't really talk too much about it. But
times.
Yeah. But we'll know more.
Fingers crossed for you. If we have to, I'll come back and edit this video, and we'll set up only a GoFundMe for for your needs.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed it won't come to that though.
Yeah, hopefully we won't need that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get all figured out.
And then the thing I really wanted to talk to you about was the boat that you have paddled for these larger drops lately. It seems like the Zen 3 is a really good fit for you.
Yeah, no, I love that boat. It's
I don't feel that way. Like I didn't dislike that boat when I had one, but it just didn't like click for me. Like the Nirvana is just like, oh yes, this is exactly what I want. And I paddled Zen 3 and I was like, it's fine, but I don't love it. Like, what do you think it is about your style or size that it makes it a better boat for you?
So the first time I paddled it was actually I picked it up from the factory and took it to Chile for 4 months, and so I kind of forced myself to learn how to paddle it well. And but yeah, that's kind of the only boat that I paddle now. I go back to the Nirvana and kind of just go back to my Zen. It's really good for, like, it's surprisingly fast for how short it is. Just having a pretty flat rocker profile, but still enough rocker that you can sweep your bow up onto anything.
And what are your characteristics? Like, what's your height, weight, inseam?
So I'm about 6 feet, 145, 150 pounds. I don't know what my inseam is, but yeah, I feel like it fits me pretty well. Kind of does everything that I want it to do, and it's just something that I'm comfortable in.
Yeah, it's incredible. Actually, that was a theme I was really noticing when I was doing my video homework, was just how well that boat seems to work for you.
Yeah, no, I paddle on anything.
Yeah, I liked it. I just didn't love it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No,
it's hard to describe sometimes, but I think sometimes you paddle a new boat and you're like, this isn't exactly what I want. And when I switched from Zen 2 to Nirvana, it was like, oh, this is exactly what I want.
Yeah.
But that's okay, you know, that's why they make different boats in different sizes.
Yep. Exactly.
And so what's next for you, Hayden? That was kind of those are the big highlights I wanted to talk to you about. Do you think I missed anything critical? Do you think
no, I mean, right now I don't have too much planned for this year. It's a little harder to plan kind of with COVID and everything, and then also picking up the North Fork Championships.
And I spoke with Alec about that when I spoke to him. But what's your function in the Voorhees family work breakdown of running North Fork Championships?
Yeah, right now I haven't done a whole lot with it, but like my mom has been kind of crushing a lot of the website, and she's really good with that kind of stuff. Kind of organizing it in that way, but yeah, we're really excited.
And I think
for it.
I believe I'm correct in saying dates are currently fixed for North Fork this year.
Yep.
Could you tell people what they are?
June 17th to the 19th, I believe.
And is it possible that people can sign up to race in that right now?
Yes, registration is open for the elite race, or for the Jake's race. I think that it ends April 15th, and then hold on one second. Let me make sure I don't get any of these wrong. Yeah, so basically we're going to go back to the original format, which is the top 10 racers from the previous year are pre-qualified, and then they will vote for the next 10 racers, and then with the qualifier race, the top 10 from that will be qualified for the finals, and then for women, the previous champion, and then the top 5 from the qualifier, or top 4.
And people can sign up online right now?
Yep. You can find everything on I don't know if the website's quite up yet, but everything's on Instagram and Facebook. You can go find that. All information.
They can just search North Fork Championships, and they'll come right up.
Yep.
Exciting! It's exciting to think about events coming back to kayaking again, and things like the big ones starting to just edge back in and come back around. And I think everyone, especially people like me who are like mostly on the spectator end of North Fork because of when it is and where it is, and especially traveling right now, are happy that stuff's coming back, that we'll be able to see some live kayaking, some high level events coming back. I think that's very, very exciting.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be it's gonna be good.
It's gonna be good. Hayden, I don't really have anything else to talk about. I'm very excited for North Fork. Where can people find you on the internet if they want to speak with you further?
You can follow me on Instagram, Hayden Voorhees Kayak, and that's kind of the main platform for me right now.
Get some. Well, I'm excited to keep seeing you shredding, and I think everyone else is excited to see that too, and to see some North Fork action from you, and maybe one day even your other brother, your younger brother.
Yeah, he's pushing it. He's starting to paddle a lot more and more.
We shall see, but that's very, very exciting things coming from the Voorhees, and I'm very happy to have had you on the show, and hopefully you can have you on again anytime.
Yeah, thank you so much, Seth.
All right, this has been Questions You Never Thought to Ask, the Whitewater Kayaking Podcast. See you next time. Peace.
You.